Right, quick check on the stream. If you could let me know, Empandro, if you can hear me, that would be lovely. Apologies for that, folks. Just a bit of a loss of audio at the start of the stream. I think we're back live. I believe. There we go. Lovely. Thank you. Right, so 11 minutes to go in qualifying. A lock-up for the Mercedes of Carlos going into turn number 1. 134.3 for him so far. Kaizen, Lorenzo and Carlos, our top three. Pimis in P11 for Alpine. Well, he's not going to settle that this time because he has invalidated his run. So, whilst the audio has been off, and you've not been able to hear me for the first however many minutes it's been of this live stream so far, multiple different championship leaders thus far in Season 7 and Tier 2. 6 different winners, 2 drivers remaining in this title race. Kaizen does come into this week leading Jack Bowie by 3 points, 304 points for him to Jack's 301. It was that unbelievable finish in Jeddah last week that saw Jack Bowie win the race right at the end. And a bit of housekeeping I tried to do earlier but couldn't because of the audio. I'll do it now that everybody can hear me. That's a good run, I think, for Daz Parker as he gets up towards the final corner for Mercedes across the start-finish line, and he improves up to P6, 136.3 for the Mercedes. So, as I was saying, Jack Bowie had his sprint. I've done it. I did this first time when I had no audio. Took the sprint race win in Saudi Arabia last week before eventually having a 5-second penalty applied to his time because he wiped out Kaizen, or he was deemed to have wiped out Kaizen at the start of the sprint. He, of course, protested his innocence after that one, as you would do in a championship battle particularly, but some differing viewpoints on that. It was interesting to see, actually. Just the differing opinions in there. All good and respectful, though, as Jay Hartnell up towards the final corner for Haas. His title hopes are still alive as he goes P6. Mathematically, himself and Carlos not necessarily in with let's say a dominant shot of winning the title. However, crazy things have happened so far this season, and there is absolutely nothing to say that it can't happen again this evening to send those two into the final round in Hungary next week with a chance of still being in this title race as Kedley invalidates his lap time towards the end of the run. Right, so we have got Kaizen on provisional pole position at the moment, with his nearest championship rival Jack Bowie down in P7. So the Red Bull is very much in need of an improvement, and he is looking to get that at the moment as he makes his way down towards P13. Hi Godzilla, very well thank you, how are you? Into the braking zone goes Jack Bowie. It's so tight at the top, and will he eventually live to rue that penalty that he got in Jeddah in that sprint? I guess that remains to be seen. Pimis in the end taking the sprint race win as a legacy of Jack Bowie's penalty. Up towards the final corner once again for Jack, and across the line this time, and he does improve by just under 0.2 of a second, but he remains P7. So at the minute he's just needing to find that little bit more wherever it may be that he's losing time. He's got 7.5 minutes left to change that and push himself closer up towards P1. Mystery has a couple of goes at getting his Alfa Romeo turned in to turn number 12. Starts to rise up the crest, flicks open the rear wing, and then heads back down again. Bit of a slopey back straight, little bit of undulation as he gets the car stopped and nicely turned in for turn 13. It's a good line that from Mystery. One of 3 drivers at the bottom there that you can see who are yet to put a lap time on the board. Empandro and Nokedli are those two. Nokedli went out earlier for a bit of an effort, but sadly for him, invalidated his lap time right at the end of his run. Mystery makes his way in towards the final two corners now. For Alfa Romeo, easy to lose the lap there, did ever so well to keep it all going. And across the line now for Mystery to go from P12 to P9. 135.9 from him. Slots in ahead of Daz Parker and just in behind Pimis. Right, what else was I going to try and catch you up on from earlier, which I wasn't able to because of the audio not quite being there. Do you know what? I think that was pretty much all, to be honest. I think that was all the important stuff that I needed to tell you about. I think I managed to get through it all pretty well. Right, Wazza is in P5. Meanwhile, Scenario 7's just slotted in behind his teammate in 6th place, and Wazza said, that's enough. That's the best I'll get out of these tyres. Best I'll get out of the car. So, provisional P5 for him, but we have still got drivers out there looking to improve. One of those is Kaizen, as he makes his way up towards turn 1. Just a little bit, tiny bit wide of the apex. And that was the other thing. Up towards turn 1, the drivers earlier were saying that the sun glare is potentially something that's going to obstruct them, shall we say, heading into the braking zone of the first corner, trying to get the car turned in. So if we do see a few drivers going wide there on occasion tonight, then that certainly would be an explanation for it. Generally, I don't think there was that much of an excitement, shall we say, collectively, to be racing in Texas this evening, but there you go. Round number 14 coming to you from Travis County, Texas, and Kaizen's lap time not really coming to you at the moment, but we will check back in with him when he comes back round. Scenario 7 is back out on the racetrack, but he's invalidated his run. Jay Hartnell's just begun one. In fact, he's just ended one, I should say. 3/10 up on his last effort, so P7 now for Jay. And then Bandro has also got a big red track map next to his name. Pimis up towards the start-finish line, I believe, to start another run, having just backed out of one previously. So he's on a 135.985 at the moment. Is Pimis rounding out the top 10, your Jeddah sprint race winner, on essentially a countback from the stewards, and does mean as a result that in the 3 sprint races we had this season, we had 3 different winners. Becco the first in Canada, Jack Bowie the second in Monza, and then Pimis the third in Jeddah. As Pimis traverses the first sector, heads down the hill and in towards that tricky old braking zone. Through up towards the DRS line on the back straight. Not the most difficult to spot, as does come at you with relatively good time. There's no blind corners or crests coming up to it that are going to limit your sight of the DRS board on either side of the racetrack, and he's got a good view of what's behind him as well, Pimis, as he spins round, and that puts pay to that particular lap time. Daz Parker back out there as well for Mercedes on 3-lap-old soft, so I don't think he'll be getting an awful lot more out of those, if I'm very honest, but we'll see. Pimis's soft tyres are 2 laps old, so I think after that spin, that's pretty much going to have to be a pit stop and try and go again, with a few drivers now just sorting out those final few thoughts, really, before heading back out onto the racetrack. This is the time to get back out there and set another time. The 133.9 from Kaizen, currently the one that's going to get him pole position. He is just over 0.4 of a second clear of AlphaTauri's Lorenzo. Kaizen in the hunt for what would be his 5th pole lap of the season. That's through turn 1 then. Goes Nokedli in towards the quick S section through 3, 4, 5, heading into 6, up through 7, then turns 8 and 9 in towards the quick left of 10. the left-handed kink, and then the braking zone of 11 following next up for Nokedli. Clips the curb. More difficult to clip the curbs in these cars than it has been previously. I mean, the curbs have always been quite a pain in the butt, shall we say, for the drivers, but especially now with these cars, the stiff suspension, the difficulty in keeping it all together, with the balance of the cars being so different now comparatively. Meanwhile, just out in front, Kaizen is coming towards the end of his latest effort on extending his gap at the front. This could well be his last lap time of the session here, Kaizen, and in fact, well, it's not actually, because there we go, that is his second outlap, I should say. So there you go, complete anticlimax on that one. Jammy for Williams, he's out there as well, and he's also just completed a couple of warm-up runs. So clearly the driver's feeling the track temperature. It's just a little bit too cool for the tyres at the moment, so they're having to go on 2 warm-up laps just to try and get them into temperature, and that will get the tyres far too much into temperature. Jammy spinning off in the first sector, and that is his qualifying pretty much done at this stage. So P4 is the best he's going to do. We've got Carlos out there as well, meanwhile, for Mercedes. And it looks as though he is also about to begin another run. So it's another sort of warm-up lap for him. The same goes for Lorenzo as well. Right, Kaizen then. 1.5 tenths just about up on his previous best through the first sector. Uses as much curb as he possibly dares to in the entrance to turn number 13. Into the exit through towards 14 and 15 comes Kaizen. Such a difficult traction zone to get right. And then in towards 16. Following that is the difficult triple right-hander of 17, 18 and 19. And then we've got turn number 20, followed by 21. There's 20. Blind apex, another difficult one. He's nailed it though, Kaizen. That's a fantastic run through the penultimate corner. And up through the long left final corner comes Kaizen, and across the line to go even quicker. 133.7 from the Aston Martin, and that could well do it for pole position for him. Jammy makes his way into the pits. Meanwhile, for Williams, Nokedli he's also in the pits actually, so he's not going to be finishing that run. So that is also him done for qualifying. Right, Jack Bowie, he's fallen to P10, has the Red Bull. What's he able to do here as he rounds the final corner? And Jack Bowie improves to P7. But way off Kaizen at the moment, so this will be brilliant news for Kaizen so far in terms of his pursuit of pole position. Lorenzo is coming towards the end of his lap. He's currently down in the middle sector on his previous best. Is the final sector enough to go and grab pole? No, it's not. It's not an improvement on his previous best lap time, and he's punished for it because into P2 goes Carlos, and into P3 goes Lorenzo's teammate Empandro. So a brilliant effort from Empandro to just squeeze ahead of Lorenzo, who also loses out to Jay Hartnell. Brilliant lap from the Haas as well. And wow, that really is not a double but a triple whammy for Lorenzo, losing P2, ending up in P5 as a result. But at the end of qualifying in the United States, it is Kaizen for the 5th time this season who sets the pole position lap time ahead of Carlos, ahead of Empandro, who out-qualifies Lorenzo for the 3rd time this season. Jay Hartnell taking 4th ahead of Lorenzo. But the big news, really, Jack Bowie at the end of qualifying with Mistrium moving ahead of him as well for Alfa Romeo, heading up in P9 with Kaizen on pole. That's a big one. Kaizen is on pole by over 4/10 of a second in the end from Carlos. Dominant from the Aston Martin. Empandro P3, Jay Hartnell P4, Lorenzo in 5th. Jammy takes 6th for Williams. Mystery in 7th. Wazza in P8 for Ferrari. Jack Bowie in 9th. Scenario 7 rounds out the top 10 for Ferrari. Nokedli in 11th place. Pimis P12. And Daz Parker in the end, I think, struggled to put a representative lap time on the board. Really had a couple of spins in qualifying, and that puts him in 13th position for for the start of the United States Grand Prix. That is coming up for you very shortly indeed. And it's a big step, this, Kaizen, towards potentially extending his championship lead. Of course, we've still got a long old 50% race to go for the drivers to negotiate. So it's far from simple, far from easy, and certainly far from in keeping with this season's enthralling title battle if this ends up being a walkaway victory for Kaizen, which I don't think he's expecting, and the likelihood of him getting that, if you do look at some of the races or all of the races we've had this season, it's not really going to happen. It's always so tight. It's always so tough for the drivers to keep position, to hold position, to take position. But we'll see who comes out on top as the race winner by the end of the evening's action in Texas tonight. Jack Bowie with 2 wins to his name, Kaizen with 3, along with Lorenzo, but in the end the 5 non-finishes have kept the AlphaTauri man largely at the title battle this season, in spite of being arguably one of the quickest in the division. But Jack and Kaizen have found that consistency. 12 points finishes for the Red Bull, 10 on the part of the Aston Martin driver, and with 6 podiums apiece as well. Most of anybody so far in Season 7, and podiums do get you championships. However, with both of them having so many, which of them is going to end up taking the title by the end of next Tuesday night's action at the Hungarian Grand Prix? We'll find out. Interesting. It's really interesting, isn't it? Everybody, apart from Daz Parker, has decided not to go for the soft tyres. Carlos, Lorenzo and Javi have all opted for the hard compound. Everybody else is on mediums for the start of this United States Grand Prix. 28 laps of action ahead of us in this one. Formation lap is underway. Yeah, it's a bit of an enticing one, that. Quite an interesting prospect as one of the Ferraris takes a good old trip across the grass. Which one was that? Was that scenario 7? Either way, an interesting one on the formation lap. Does need to make up positions quickly, does Jack Bowie. He knows that not a disaster if he loses points to Kaizen tonight. Of course, whoever naturally goes into the final round in Budapest as the championship either has the better chances, of course, of winning the championship. That's just simple maths. But that does not mean to say that Jack Bowie going into Hungary behind on points is going to be out of a shot of winning the championship, particularly when you consider that we've had so many crazy races this season. That is the Ferrari of scenario 7 spinning back round and actually putting himself back down to P10 as a result of that. Will we see a battle between Kaizen and Jack Bowie tonight? We certainly saw it in Saudi Arabia, not once but twice in the main race. Kaizen passing Jack Bowie before breaking his front wing off, and then he came back through again and passed Pinnis and Jack Bowie for a second time before eventually Jack would come back at him on the final corner of the final lap to take the win. You couldn't write some of the things that we've seen this season. And what are we about to see in Texas tonight? Well, that is an answer that we are going to get very shortly indeed as the drivers make their way on to the back of the grid. Daz Parker makes his way out of the wall on the exit of the final corner and then eventually puts himself on to the racetrack into his grid position. A little bit of drama actually before this race has even got going tonight. That bodes well, doesn't it? Right, just about ready to go is Kaizen, about to extend his advantage at the top of the tree. The United States Grand Prix is underway And then on the front row of the grid, it's not been a bad start by Carlos, and Kaizen up towards turn 1 as we once again get the world's best camera angles. Empandro getting past Carlos in towards turn 1. There's a bit of contact with Kaizen, who backs out as a result, and Carlos might just take advantage of that, and he does. Round the outside he goes and gets into the lead of the Grand Prix, does the Mercedes of Carlos. Fantastic start from him. There was contact in the build-up to that, so we'll see if anything does come of that. Jack Bowie's risen to 8th off the start of the race. Empandro falling to 3rd. Lorenzo has climbed back up to 4th position for Alpha Tauri, with Pimis falling to 13th place off the start of the race. And meanwhile out front, Kaizen's back ahead of Carlos, and it's a bit of a dive bomb from Empandro going into turn 11. Has he made it stick? We're about to find out as they head down the back straight. He tucks in behind him, and into the slipstream of the Mercedes he goes. And actually, he might get a 2 for 1 here, potentially, if he's able to get close enough heading into the braking zone of turn number 13. Oh, it's very close indeed. Kaizen and Carlos now making contact. And Empandro says thank you, and he moves into the lead of the United States Grand Prix. Lorenzo now gets past Carlos as well. Does he? There's a little bit more wheel-to-wheel brushing as Lorenzo gets down the inside, manages to catch the back end on the exit. Carlos, though, is still there as they go into the triple right-hander, and he does get past Lorenzo. And back up into 3rd place goes the Mercedes by the end of lap 1. We've had 3 different race leaders. Empandro is the latest of them, as the Alfa Romeo of Mystery has a look at the Alfa Tauri of Lorenzo, who himself is still trying to get past Carlos. There's a bit of a back-end loss for Jamie, who is going to be under pressure from Jack Bowie before too long. But here comes Mystery down the inside of Lorenzo in towards turn 1. Medium tyres on the Alfa Romeo, hard for the Alfa Tauri. Lorenzo trying to keep his nose in there, but Mystery gets the job done. And up then into P4 he goes. Jack Bowie wasn't quite able to capitalise on Jamie's little mistake on the exit of the final corner, so he stays in 8th position as Daz Parker looks to tussle with Nokedli for 9th place, and indeed he does get past him. What a move that is by Daz Parker. Brilliant stuff to get himself ahead and up then into P9. Meanwhile, Empandro and Kaizen are going at it. A big dive bomb from Empandro, 2nd time in as many laps he's done that, and he executes it brilliantly. But here comes Kaizen once again, heading into what would usually be the DRS zone, but no DRS just yet on lap number 2 of the Grand Prix. Empandro with some fantastic straight line speed, but Kaizen's got the inside line. Empandro holds the outside and keeps the lead. Brilliant stuff from him. Great defending. Meanwhile, Lorenzo is coming back at Mystery for 4th place. He does get him. Mystery is on medium tyres, so he ideally wants to make his way past. In that battle now is Jay Hartnell trying to go around the outside heading into turn 16. Couldn't quite make that one stick. But Mystery's gone a bit wide, and Jay sticks his nose in. It's going to be difficult to go around the outside of the penultimate corner. Mystery, though, might go a little bit deep, and he does. And Jay potentially is down the inside. No, he's not. Has to back out. Jamie's there too in the Williams to try and take advantage. And out front, we've got another battle. Kaizen is now ahead of Empandro and back up into the lead of the United States Grand Prix, but he's gone very deep into turn 1, and Empandro cuts back underneath him. They're now side by side going through turn 2 as Kaizen defends the inside. Empandro goes around the outside and he retakes the lead again. So it's another change. That's surely a corner cut. He'll get a warning for that one. Will Empandro, and when will we see that first penalty is the question. Scenario 7 meanwhile is into the pits for Ferrari after what I assume was an early incident for him, and so he will rejoin the racetrack. P13 and last of the runners on a fresh set of medium tyres. Back out front, Lorenzo still interested in taking P3 away from Carlos. Jay Hartnell is right behind the Alfa Romeo of Mystery, heading down towards turn 12, and Kaizen's back ahead once again of Empandro, who once again cuts back underneath him and can't quite get back ahead. And another brilliant bit of action between those two. They've managed pretty much to keep it, well, pretty well, pretty clean so far, those two. Eventually I got those words out with Empandro 0.3 of a second down on Kaizen as they headed towards the penultimate corner on the 3rd lap of the United States Grand Prix. There is DRS at this stage. Up towards turn 1 once again. Fastest lap for Jay Hartnell in the Haas. 9/10 of a second down on Lorenzo as we make our way up towards turn 1. Looking at the back of the AlphaTauri, who continues to chase down the Mercedes of Carlos for P3. And they're not far off the battle for the lead. And that's quite big because... Oh, Jamie's out of the race. So I'll come to that in a moment. Jamie has come a cropper somewhere. Where's that happened? I'm not really too sure. I can't really see where that happened. But either way, that is Jamie out of the United States Grand Prix. It's happened on the exit of turn 1. So I think he spun it on the exit, and that as a result has put him out of the race. So into the wall he goes. The safety car is deployed as a legacy of that. It was deployed after Kaizen and Impandro had passed the pit entrance, and they, as a result, didn't really get any sort of benefit there of being able to come in for a pit stop, which works out relatively well for Carlos and Lorenzo, to be honest, because if that safety car had been called about 10 seconds earlier, then Kaizen and Impandro would have been able to come back into the pits, and that completely undoes the strategy on the hard tyres. It's never good when you're running the hards and the safety car comes out very early on in the race. It is something that just meddles with your strategy quite a bit, actually, and can really cost you going into the latter stages, unless, of course, there ends up being another safety car, which in this league, I say it every single week, happens quite a lot as Impandro pits for AlphaTauri. So he does blink. Medium tyres will come off the car. Mystery is in as well. Daz Parker has also made his way in, as has Nokedley for McLaren. Pimis stays out. Scenario 7, I'm not really too sure what he's going to do. And back out of the pits goes Daz Parker. The reason I say that is because Scenario 7's only just pitted for medium tyres, so would it make sense for him to pit at this stage? Not really too sure. But on to the hards then. Go Impandro, Mystery, Daz Parker and Nokedley. For anyone watching who might not necessarily be that acquainted with the tyre rules in Formula 1, saying, well, hang on, they've just gone onto hard tyres, so why are they not in a bad position? Well, because they started on a different compound of tyre and switched on to the hards rather than starting on the hards, having to switch on to a different set, to a different compound. In reality, everybody watching this will know for sure that rule, pretty much. But in case you don't, there you go, that's why. Anyway, Lorenzo in P3 for AlphaTauri. He and Carlos had been catching the top two, actually, a little bit, or they had been certainly keeping pace with them. Carlos was around about a second back from Impandro. It helped, of course, that the top two were battling away pretty much every corner for the opening 3 or 4 laps of this race before the safety car was deployed. Impandro's pit stop now gives the leaders something to think about, really, having just switched on to a set of hard tyres. Whether the hards will make it to the end of the race, I'm not entirely sure, to be very honest. We'll see. Tyre wear tends to be a little bit high. It is quite a limited and it's quite a loaded racetrack, so yeah, taking any set of tyres to the end here is it's an ask, let's say, but maybe not impossible. We'll see. That's why we do have this safety car break. Have, of course, the last day or two had this tragic news coming from Turkey and Syria about an earthquake which has now taken so many lives, and our thoughts at the Formula Racing League go out to anybody affected by that disaster. Lap 6 then of the race. We are under safety car conditions. Eisen leads Carlos by about, well, I'm not really sure why I'm saying how much he's leading him by, because we've got a safety car, so it doesn't really matter. But he does lead Carlos for now. Impandro realistically is in that top two, but he has just pitted, putting him 8th at the moment, but that could be a net. Who knows? at this stage. Certainly has opened up one or two possibilities, really. So it's an interesting one, interesting dynamic, this race, heading into the final few laps, really, of the pit window for some of the drivers this evening, and that, as a result, changes strategies again, because can you now go longer on one particular set of tyres? Now, of course, that we've ended up being behind the safety car for a couple of laps, that's certainly helped the drivers to nurse those tyres. It's 2 less laps that they've been pounding the tyres on the racetrack, and you would feel as a result that they can potentially squeeze a few more laps out of those tyres before their pit window hits. Safety car then in at the end of lap number 6. So Kaizen, having started on pole, still leads the race. Just about. Him and Empandro going side by side for pretty much every corner of the first 4 laps of the race before the AlphaTauri came into the pits and has changed the dynamic, really, strategically, of this race. Is it going to be a one-stop on hard tyres? Potentially, is it going to be more for him? Well, we'll find out as this race unfolds. If there are more safety car periods in this Grand Prix, then we can be pretty certain that there'll be more pit stops to follow as well. Kaizen then, he's gone for, he thought about going for it. He stamped on it and then eventually has gone for it. Carlos, he's not really gone with him. He had gone with him first time, and then Kaizen almost cheekily stopped, but I think it was just about fine. Carlos then isn't really under any threat from Lorenzo either, so it's almost a little bit of a tame restart, really. Nobody's on the back of anybody else, although as I say that, Empandro does now get involved with Pimis going into turn 2. Round the outside goes the AlphaTauri. Pimis holds it through turn 3 and stays in front of Empandro. The longer the Alpine can do this, the better it is for Kaizen and for Carlos, because they are going to need to stretch out an advantage if they're going to take those medium and hard tyres longer into this race and have essentially a better strategy towards the end of it on fresher tyres. Unless, of course, Empandro's got to make another pit stop, because this is a track that does eat the tyres a little bit, and I just wonder if those hard tyres, even being the hardest in the range, are able to make it that far into this race. But we'll see. The Alfa Romeo, meanwhile, of Mystery is having a little look at Empandro whilst he's trying to get past Pimis. Jack Bowie up to P5 as a result of the pit stops happening around him. 4 positions then behind his championship rival Kaizen. Jay Hartnell is 7/10 of a second off the podium position. Still not out of the title fight is Jay Hartnell. Neither is Carlos. So far it's going relatively well for them tonight, but we are only 7 laps in to the race. Plenty can happen. Don't want to jinx it, but there haven't been any penalties just yet, despite Empandro's ludicrous corner cut earlier on. 1:38.2 from Kaizen to set the fastest lap of the race. He's already got the point for pole position, looking to also secure the point for the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, taking him to 42 points coming out of this race and going into Budapest in a week's time, the final round of season 7. As this championship battle surely goes down to the wire next week. Through towards the end of the first sector then come Lorenzo and Jay, and Jay Hartnell's got a fair bit of pace to use actually on these mediums, so again the safety cars helped particularly the medium runners to squeeze a few more laps out of these tyres before they do start to go off, and he's enjoying a bit of a purple patchy performance here. Is Jay Hartnell still closing up on Lorenzo. No DRS just yet available to the drivers. That is activated next lap. The safety car has just come back into the pits, so the 3rd lap after that is when we get the rear wings opening, and 12 miles an hour more straight line speed as the drivers look to get overtakes done, which are happening particularly, as we would have expected, down the back straight and heading into turn 1 as well. Empandro a bit further down is still behind Pimis. He's half a second down on him, so he hasn't been able to clear him just yet, which is important for the drivers out front. Kaisen's open out a gap of just about 2 seconds back to Carlos, as DRS does get enabled on lap number 9 of the race, and that's going to give the advantage to Jay Hartnell. Not just yet, because the start-finish line is after the DRS line at this circuit, as it is on the majority of the racetracks, but it is down the back straight that Jay Hartnell will be presented with his first opportunity to pass Lorenzo with the aid of DRS and make his way up into the podium positions. Scenario 7 has just lost a position to Nikedli, and that's because he has spun round. As Kaisen gets a 3-second time penalty. Now that's big. Could be big news that come the end of the race. I'm not entirely sure. I'd probably guess, because he was exceeding track limits a few too many times for the steward's liking. He's 2 seconds ahead of Carlos, so as it stands, if it were to finish like this, which very probably won't, because lots more will happen in this race, more pit stops to come as well, he would end up losing this race by a second to Carlos. And Lorenzo is in that battle too. He now is within a second of Carlos. Jay Hartnell still just about half a second behind him, but Jay will be ruining his luck there that Lorenzo's managed to get to within a second of the Mercedes in that race for P2 before Jay can really have an opportunity to take a shot really at P3 and at Lorenzo. Lorenzo's teammate Empandro still behind Pivis, still looking for a way through. And this, well, in the end, this safety car restart really has worked against Empandro. He's not been able to make up the ground that he would have expected to and would have hoped to in the first couple of laps after the safety car peeled back into the pit lane. 6/10 still between Lorenzo and Jay. Haas and AlphaTauri this season, the only two teams to have both their drivers in the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship. They have been for a few rounds now. Scenario 7 retires in the pit lane for Ferrari. He's had quite enough of this race, and that's him and Jamie. Out of the running, 11 drivers left in the race. The top 15 in the Formula Racing League take home points. So, as it stands, irrespective of whether Scenario 7 and Jamie had stayed in the race or not, everybody will get points tonight. Meanwhile, Wazza is having a go at Jack Bowie here, and he does get past him. So into the braking zone of turn number 12 they go, and the Ferrari of Wazza able to pass the Red Bull of Jack Bowie, and our second placed man in the championship is out of the top 5 in the United States Grand Prix. Good words there, as Wazza continues on his way. He's got some good pace as well there. Pulled out a gap of 0.8 of a second from Jack, who, I do wonder, has he got any front wing damage perhaps on his car? I'm not too sure, but either way, tremendous pace that from Wazza to pass him and then open out a gap of pretty much a second. Pivis now pits for Alpine, so that releases Empandro. He's been getting quite sick and tired of the back of the Alpine for the last couple of laps, so he'll be grateful to see that happen. It's mediums off and hards on for Pivis, who will rejoin the race 11th and last of the current runners. That phrase with hard tyres being on the car. Empandro, there we go. I was expecting that to happen at some point. He also gets a 3-second time penalty for exceeding track limits. I did see him cut a corner earlier on in the Grand Prix, and that certainly would have been one of the warnings that eventually led to the penalty being awarded to him by the stewards. Mystery is 0.8 of a second down on the AlphaTauri at the moment. Further up top, Jay Hartnell again chasing down Lorenzo, again getting marginally closer, heading into the braking zone of turn 12, but not close enough. Lorenzo is certainly making some good inroads on Carlos as it stands, but the Mercedes holding firm, staying ahead of the AlphaTauri for now. Jay, the only one of that 3 to be running the medium tyres at the moment. Kaiser now has a gap of over 3 seconds back to Carlos, so this is working well for him right now, despite the fact that he does have a penalty. He's got a decent buffer. Back to the train behind, and into the pits then comes Jay Hartnell. So he'll discard those medium tyres. He'll put on a set of the white wall hard tyres, I very much suspect. I'd be shocked if it's any other colour than that. Can only be the red softs or the white hards, and it is the hards going on to the car. Or is it? Is that another? That's another set of mediums for Jay Hartnell. I wonder, has he already pitted in this race? I'm trying to remember if he's already made a pit stop or not. But another set of mediums on to that car for Jay Hartnell. I can only assume he pitted under the safety car, and I just not realised that he had, because that otherwise would necessitate another pit stop for him, which I'd be surprised to see. No, that's his first stop of the race. So he's gone from mediums on to mediums. So unless there's something that I'm completely missing there, as Pimis cuts a corner and gets a penalty, I'm a little bit confused as to how that's happened for Jay and how he's ended up on the medium tyres. Either way, here comes Mystery, heading down towards turn 12, having a pop at Empandro, but not able to get past Empandro just yet in the AlphaTauri. Yeah, answers on a postcard. I'm sure there must be some sort of reasonable explanation as to why Jay's gone from mediums onto mediums. Being me, I'm probably just not quite seeing what it is. Anyway, Lorenzo 0.3 of a second then behind Carlos, right behind him as they head up towards turn 1. The Mercedes doesn't have DRS, but he's got a really good exit out of the final turn as Carlos. That was brilliant from the Mercedes as Wazza makes his way into the pits in the Ferrari. He does go on to a set of hard tyres, so away he goes. And Jay Hartnell continues on his mediums, so he will get ahead of Wazza here into turn 1. Wazza will rejoin. Where's he going to be in relation to Pimis? No, he is going to be ahead, isn't he? Yeah, he is. Pimis just making his way in towards turn 1 now, so that settles that one. Meanwhile, Lorenzo in towards turn 11. Looks to get a decent exit and close up on Carlos, heading down towards turn 12. Up this back straight they go. Once again, Carlos with a good exit out of 11. And that doesn't really give Lorenzo much of a chance heading into the braking zone of 12, because look at that. Barely closes up by the time they get there. Super stuff from him. Behind, the other AlphaTauri of Empandro has closed up on the sister Red Bull car. Jack Bowie occupying 4th at the minute. Still going on his medium tyres is Jack, so he's pulling a longer stint on these medium tyres to give himself presumably some more grip and some more pace towards the end of this Grand Prix. Empandro knows that he's got to make up some ground, make up some time now because of his penalty. As in towards the final 2 corners of lap number 13 they go. Kaisen's lead 4.3 seconds out front. Empandro all over the back of Jack Bowie as they head into the final corner. Mystery just behind them as well. There goes the rear wing on Empandro's car, and this should be a little bit candy from a baby really, as he flies past Jack Bowie and into the braking zone of turn 1. Empandro is up then into 4th place. Jay Hartnell fastest lap, 1:37.4 from the Haas driver. Mystery is going to be the next one to potentially have a pop at passing Jack. Lorenzo still half a second down on Carlos. Texas, one of 8 states to host a Grand Prix. Miami, of course, being another one last year. Nevada, visiting that one later this year. California with Long Beach. New York as well. Indiana, Arizona. Plenty of history for Formula 1 in the United States. Mystery has now gotten past Jack Bowie. Into P5 goes the Alpha. And Jack falling down another position on his ever-aging medium tyres. Lorenzo still looking for a way past Carlos. He's putting up some really good defences right now, is the Mercedes man. And Kedley has a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings now for McLaren. He's currently running in 8th place, half a second down on the Mercedes of Daz Parker. Meanwhile, in the battle for 8th, we've got Jay Hartnell getting ahead of Waza, who... Oh, and Kedley makes a mistake behind him. And whilst all that's been happening, Kaizen is in the pits for Aston Martin. Back out he comes, hard tyres on the car, and he rejoins just behind Daz Parker. That's not worked out as he would have preferred. Kaizen wouldn't have wanted a Mercedes to be right in front of him as he exited the pit lane, but sadly for him, that's kind of just the way it's worked out. Kedley has meanwhile left the session for McLaren, so his ghost car will be running around the racetrack for a while, but he won't actually be there. Pimis is in the pits as well for Alpine down the hill, and Pimis has left the session as well for Alpine. So 2 drivers leaving in quick succession. Whether that's to do with some sort of connection issue, I'm not entirely sure. Either way, Kaizen now is having a go at passing... where are we? Having a go at passing Jay Hartnell. There we go, round the outside of turn number 12 they go. Got it together eventually. And he does get past the Haas. And into P6 then goes our championship leader. And he's 7 seconds behind Jack Bowie. Goes a little bit deep. And is that the chance for Jay to get back round? And tell you what, this could be a brilliant pass if Jay can pull this one off, and he might just do that, you know, as he's got down the inside now for the penultimate corner. Kaizen still tries to hang it round the outside, and they're still wheel-to-wheel going up towards the final corner. Jay down the inside, but Kaizen holds the outside. That's brilliant racing between those two. It's not quite over yet as we head up towards turn 1, because Jay has DRS. He's got the slipstream. He pulls out to one side of Kaizen, who tries to hold it round the outside, then tries to cut back underneath the Haas, but Jay Hartnell has gotten back in front of Kaizen. Fantastic racing from both of those two drivers. Exceptional stuff. They kept it clean despite going side by side to some really tricky corners. That will be up there with action of the season by the end of this campaign. That is some splendid stuff from both of them. Lorenzo, meanwhile, is pitted for AlphaTauri. He's rejoined just behind Kaizen. Carlos, you never know. He might just have a shot here at being in the lead of this race when he comes into the pits, because he's on hard tyres. He's been running on them since the start of the race. He can take them further into the Grand Prix, surely, because of the fact, again, as I say, that he did have a safety car period as well to help nurse those tyres a little bit more. Carlos is a real contender here to take the victory in the United States Grand Prix this evening. 1 win to his name. Austrian Grand Prix, round 2 of the season. Feels like a long time ago now. Some 12 weeks ago, as into the pits then comes the Mercedes. Gets the car slowed down for the pit limiter. So he'll get rid of those hard tyres and onto the car instead. Oh, Kaizen's out! Kaizen's retired from the United States Grand Prix. There is debris scattered all over the racetrack where the Aston Martin has come a cropper, and Kaizen at the penultimate corner has lost control of his Aston Martin, and he might just have lost control of this title lead. That's a massive moment in the title battle. We've said it time and time again this season. Absurd things can and will happen in this division. Just when you think that something might just be headed one way, the racing god that seems to be looking over this division just swings things once again, and it has swung very much in Jack Bowie's favour. As it stands, he will take the lead of the Drivers' Championship by finishing in 3rd. Expect the unexpected. Can really never be said enough for this league, for this division. Wow, Kaizen is out of the running, and he was leading so beautifully. He was driving so well. He was stroking the car around the racetrack so nicely, but all it took was one mistake and that has put him out of the race. And as soon as that message came up that he was out, Jack Bowie's eyes would have lit up, because he knows now this is his chance to go into the Hungarian Grand Prix next Tuesday night as the championship leader. And that is huge. It's a big moment. In the end, it's probably going to be put down as a big mistake from Kaizen. But in reality, sometimes all it takes is the smallest errors. And that is what does for you. Lorenzo, fastest lap, 1:37.3 from the AlphaTauri. Wow, what a turn of events we have had tonight. And I'm relatively sort of speechless, actually, because I really wasn't expecting that. I really was thinking that Kaizen was just driving so well tonight that the win, albeit he did have a penalty, might well have been coming his way. But again, that's all it takes for a win, a potential win, to turn into a nightmare. Now it's down then towards turn 12 come our race leaders, Empandro, followed by Mystery. And as they get towards the end of the back straight, Mystery thinks better of the late dart down the inside. Jack Bowie is 5 seconds behind this battle. He's still going, is Jack Bowie, on his 17-lap old medium tyres. Such an impressive stint for the Red Bull. I think he would have been hoping that there might have been a safety car when Kaizen crashed out of the race, but that didn't transpire. And as a result, he remains out there. But he's got a train of cars chasing him down. Jay Hartnell, Lorenzo, Carlos, all in there. All about to have a pop at Jack Bowie, who's a bit vulnerable here, really. There's not much he can do about this because his tyres are completely dead. 1:36.9 for Carlos, or if not dead, certainly in a much worse state than these three behind him, as Jay takes P3. Lorenzo is now having a go at him immediately afterwards. Jack's going to be looking at his wingers for the next few corners because he has got not one but two cars behind him. And in amongst all of that, by the way, Carlos pitted and he is rejoined behind Lorenzo. So the AlphaTauri was trying to get that move done for quite a few laps before the pit stop phase, and he's got it done in the pit stop phase with Carlos rejoining the race behind him. So the undercut worked for Lorenzo, and look at the exit for Lorenzo there compared with Jack Bowie. He's not going to pass him yet into turn 11 because he wants DRS down the back straight. Not an awful lot again that Jack Bowie could do about any of this, as across the DRS line we go. Lorenzo getting closer to the back of the Red Bull. Where's Carlos in all of that? He is sitting just behind. Lorenzo down the inside into turn 12, gets ahead, and now Carlos will swoop in and take advantage, and he also passes Jack, who on this lap has lost 3 positions. Not a massive shock given his tyre age. And ahead of them, Empandro and Mystery separated by 0.7 of a second. But Empandro does have a penalty, so that is something to factor in come the end of the evening's action. Lap 20 of 28 of a pulsating United States Grand Prix so far. 22 drivers have finished in the top 15 so far this campaign. It's been a tremendous season of racing over the first 14 rounds. Just one to go after tonight. Every one of them has had its own characteristics. Every one has had its own particular frenetic moment of drama. Tonight's one has come from Kaizen. Will there be more than one? It remains to be seen. There's still time for anything to happen in this race. 10 drivers left in the United States Grand Prix. Empandro leads 1.1 now ahead of Mystery, so he's got that buffer, but he doesn't have the buffer to keep himself in the lead come the end of the race because of his 3-second penalty. So as it stands, he's sort of just hoping that Mystery is going to get a penalty of his own and cost himself a chance at victory in the process. Jack Bowie's still going on those mediums. He's 1 second down on his previous best in the middle sector. of lap 20. 4 seconds down the road is Wazza in the Ferrari. So Jack here will gain points on Kaizen, but I don't know if he'll gain as many as he certainly would have wanted. Empandro pits for AlphaTauri, so he'll get rid of those hards. Jack Bowie's come in as well for Red Bull, so both those drivers in the pits. I wonder if Jack was just waiting for another safety car. It's soft tyres on for Empandro, so he rejoins in P5. Jack Bowie back out the pits at the moment, P7, but where is Daz Parker going to be? He's going to be in the pits, that's where, so that doesn't matter. Jack Bowie then into the pit exit, controls the rear, and P7 for him, so that's not worked out too badly. Soft tyres on the car. He is, well, yeah, he's still quite far behind Wazza, really, isn't he? Which I think is, yeah, I don't know. Can he improve on P7 tonight, Jack Bowie? Will there be another safety car? Will there be another pit stop for somebody? Either way, as it stands, Mystery is leading this race, but he has got, just as I say that, Lorenzo and Jay Hartnell going side by side, and Lorenzo takes P2. So Mystery has the AlphaTauri of Lorenzo now coming at him here. Mystery has been on the podium 3 times so far this season, looking to become the 7th different winner in Season 7 of Tier 2. However, Lorenzo very much threatens that. 1.7 behind on fresher tyres, softer tyres, and you rather feel as though Mystery might just be a sitting duck when Lorenzo gets there. Jay Hartnell's in. So he went on to a set of mediums after his, or during his first stop. He's going to go on to another set, or potentially softs now actually, for Jay. You would wager, because they will certainly last 6 laps, so that will be relatively easy for him to do. And it is indeed soft tyres on the car. That's also a chance for Jay to grab the fastest lap of the race. And he is another one, of course, who's going to gain ground on Kaizen as a result of this. Came into tonight on 265 points, so 39 points behind Kaizen. So, as it stands, Carlos, Jack Bowie, and Jay Hartnell will all still be in with a shout of winning the title in Hungary. I mean, of course, Jack Bowie will, because he'll be leading the championship. But Jay and Carlos will still be in that fight too, with Kaizen in 2nd place. So we really are set for a 4-way title decider in Hungary next Tuesday night. And depending on how the final few laps of this race go, Carlos might be in a really strong position, because he potentially is on for P2 here, maybe even P1. Mystery, rather feel, is not to offer very well. If he does, he deserves driver of the season. Down the inside goes Lorenzo, though. He's not wasting any time, and he does get past Mystery. Or does he? Mystery's back down the inside, and he does get back in front of Lorenzo. And so the Alfa Romeo survives the first attack. What about those that are going to follow? And Carlos is having a look, and into the pits comes Mystery. He cannot hold on any longer on those tyres. He has to pit. Hasn't really got a choice. Meanwhile, Lorenzo has DRS, but as does Carlos up towards turn 1. Here comes the Mercedes. Are we going to see a late move into the braking zone in turn 1? We sort of are. Lorenzo goes wide to give Carlos space. That was a smart move, that, by Carlos, actually. Kind of put Lorenzo off a little bit, and this will keep them close heading into turns 3, 4, all this S section. And Carlos can remain nice and snug if he can keep it all together. Going down the back straight, he will have DRS. Lorenzo will not. And these final few laps then are going to be massive for Carlos's title challenge, essentially. Winning this race would be huge for him. Gaining 40 points on Kaizen, and as a legacy of that, would he be? He would be in front of Kaizen in the championship. So yeah, a win would be huge for him. Into turn 12 we go. Kaizen, of course, does have the lap for the for pole position, I should say. So he will at the very least be taking that one home with it. Carlos having a look at Lorenzo, trying to get past the AlphaTauri. There's going to have to be some good defence as well then from Lorenzo in the final few laps to keep Carlos at bay. Has experience of winning, of course. Looking for his 4th win of the season is Lorenzo. And with Kaizen out the race, Jack Bowie not in the picture to win it. An opportunity beckons for Lorenzo to take that 4th win. Wazza currently P3 for Ferrari after Mystery's pit stop. He's got M-Pounder or 3 seconds behind him as Jay Hartnell sets the fastest lap of the race. But M-Pounder has a penalty. Jay Hartnell 4 seconds behind the AlphaTauri. So Wazza, first appearance of the season, is going to get his first podium of the season by the looks of it. But who's going to get the win? Carlos having to collect himself on the exit of turn 9. Loses 1 or 2 tenths to Lorenzo. Not an awful lot. And well, he fell about a second down there, but I think, yeah, he was within a second at the detection zone itself, so that's fine. He can use this back straight to close back up to Lorenzo. Although, he's not gained that much, has he? As they head into the braking zone of the turn 12, he's only gained a couple of tenths. So Lorenzo with a good exit out of turn 11 to maintain a gap back to the Mercedes. And actually looking, he's threatening here, isn't he, Lorenzo, to open the gap out to beyond a second. Although just as I say that, Carlos is strong in this 3rd sector and he manages to claw back a couple of tenths more. So he is still going to have DRS up the home straight, just about, I think, 9 tenths of a second down now. So Lorenzo seems to have a bit of an upper hand in terms of pace at the moment. We use a little bit to try and break the slipstream. Into turn 1 we go. Carlos braking as late as he dares. You can really see that camera angle gives you a great shot of just how late the drivers are daring to brake into turn 1, especially on worn tyres, especially with worn brakes. It's a tremendous effort, lots of trust and faith being put in those tyres to get the car stopped. Down the hill we go, through 10, in towards the braking zone of 11. We had a grandstand finish at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last week. It was Kaizen versus Jack Bowie for the race win 7 days ago. It's about to be Lorenzo versus Carlos for the win, and this time Carlos is very, very close indeed to Lorenzo. Less than half a second back as we head in towards the braking zone of turn 12, but Lorenzo stays in front. Carlos not quite close enough to go for the overtake yet. 25 laps in to this 28 lap race. Another thriller in the Formula Racing League. It never seems to disappoint, this division. Every week it gives us something else to shout about. Doesn't matter if there's only 13 drivers in the lobby at the start of it. They still manage to give us some tremendous entertainment. They have done throughout the season. It has been arguably, surely, the best division in the Formula Racing League so far in Season 7. I don't think many people will be lining up to cast doubt over that one, particularly when you see the standard of racing and the entertainment on show. Sometimes it's a bit scrappier than other times, but that's what you sometimes need from racing. You don't always need it to be for the purists. You just sometimes need a good old fight at the front, and that is what we have had in pretty much every race so far this season. The US Grand Prix last year was one of 15 races in which Ferrari and Red Bull did not take out the podium. We're only going to have one Ferrari on the podium tonight. The other 2 spaces taken up as it stands by an AlphaTauri and a Mercedes. We had a Mercedes finish second here last year when Lewis Hamilton had to relinquish the lead to Max Verstappen late on in Texas. This time it's a Mercedes on the hunt for the lead. Carlos tracking down Lorenzo and still not quite close enough heading into turn 12 to attack Lorenzo. He's got a couple of laps left here, Carlos, to try and get something done if he is to take his second race win of the season. Formerly our championship leader, he's now going to be second in the championship as Carlos, potentially, after tonight. been such an enthralling season, such an enthralling race, and it's about to come to a head. 32 points for second place, so Carlos, as it stands, will still be just behind Kaizen in that battle for second in the championship. So the extra 8 points up for grabs for winning this race are massive, indescribably so, through turn 1 for the penultimate time. I think he'll know, Carlos, the back of his head, that winning this race is going to put him so much closer to title contention, because he's not just overtaking Kaizen in the championship if he wins this race, but he's also, and this is the case if he finishes second anyway, getting a lot closer to Jack Bowie. Down in P7 is the Red Bull. So he may be taking the championship lead tonight with his 14 points, Jack Bowie. And as a legacy of that, moving 10 points clear of Kaizen, due to the fact that Kaizen took pole position, will still be under threat from Carlos. The Mercedes still has a massive opportunity here at taking the championship. Jay Hartner will also still be in the fight. He'll be in the hunt as well. For Haas, one of the 4 drivers in it, going into the final round of the season in Hungary. Lorenzo, unfortunately, is not going to be in that battle. Loosely, I think, but in reality, it will be quite difficult for him to claim that. But even for him, I mean, 247 points at the moment. He'll move on to 287 with this race win, and that will put him 27 points behind Kaizen in the championship battle. So not impossible mathematically. I think we are going to have 5 drivers in it next week. I'll need to double check the maths on that ahead of next week, but either way, a multi-driver championship battle is coming to a head. These two both in it as it stands. Lorenzo winning this race as it stands. But in the final couple of sectors of this race, can Carlos do anything about Lorenzo winning this race? 0.8 of a second back as we head on to the back straight. He's lost some time in the early part of this final lap, has Carlos. And so if he's going to take the win, it's going to have to be something very, very special at this stage. Into turn 12 goes Lorenzo for the final time, leading Carlos. Into 13 we go. 14 awaits for the final time in this race. What a brilliant encounter we have seen this evening. Kaizen losing the lead, losing the race win due to a crash. It's opened the door for Carlos and for Jack Bowie, and potentially Jay and Lorenzo in a sense, to get themselves in the title picture going into the final race. Lorenzo rounds the final corner. He wins the United States Grand Prix. Carlos in P2 for Mercedes, very much back in the title hunt going into Budapest next week. Waza in P3 for Ferrari. First appearance, first podium. Empandra takes P4 on track, but he'll lose that to Jay Hartnell. That is a massive collection of points for him. As a result, in the context of the championship, Jack Bowie will come home for P7 behind the Alfa Romeo of mystery, with Daz Parker taking 8th position for Mercedes. Nokedley a lap down in the end in the McLaren, but out front in the Alpha Tauri for the 4th time this season, it is Lorenzo who takes the Grand Prix victory, gives himself a sniff heading into Hungary next week. Carlos has a little bit more than that at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Lorenzo then in P1, 6/10 of a second ahead of Carlos Waza in P3 for Ferrari. He picks up driver of the day as well. Jay Hartnell P4 and Bandro in P5 for AlphaTauri. Mystery P6. Jack Bowie in 7th place takes the championship lead, but he's far from safe with Kaizen and Carlos still relatively close by. Daz Parker in 8th place. Nock Headley in P9. Pimis in P10. And Kaizen, Scenario 7 and Jamie all out of the race. Well, this season just continues to give us thrill after thrill after thrill. Another shock tonight has led to an absolutely brilliant grandstand finish. You cannot miss it at the Hungarian Grand Prix. The title decider. It all comes down to Budapest. We will see you next week for one final round of action in Tier 2 in Season 7 in the Formula Racing League. Until then, take good care of yourselves and good night.